going to be the most important topic you're going to listen to today. And so pay attention now. We are talking about DAO Vote. And for now, I'd like to bring on Jamelia on here. Jamelia, uh, hi there. How are you? You're muted. Sorry.
There we go. I'm doing well.
All right. I appreciate that you're taking the time out late. What's it, 9 p.m. in Dubai?
About 9:30 or so. No problem.
9:30. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming. You and I have spent a lot of time in the past week going over a lot of documents and things like that. So what I'd like to do is first go over what we have, and then I'd like to kind of bring you on board and talk a little bit. But before I do that, let me make sure that the folder is currently updated, and it looks like it is, so that's great. Let's move on to this slide. Here we go. All right, so when I presented this last week, I talked about the 4 elements that are going to be available to everybody in the community. There's a DAO formation letter, there's the Genesis allocation cap table, there's a DAO Corp operating agreement, and there's a DAO governing charter. If you go to the link that's in teal on the top right there, you're going to find a Google folder that has all of these components in there. And there's also a channel on Discord, DAO Vote, that you'll be able to visit. But for right now, let's first go through this information and figure out what we have to talk about. So the cap table is probably the easiest one. You've seen this before. There's one change in it. I'm very pleased to report that through successful negotiations with the team of backers, we've essentially reached consensus, and we're able to essentially include them and merge them into the OGs group. So now I believe that is a satisfactory resolution, and makes for the cap table that you see up front. So this is the cap table we are going with. In the folder, this Google Doc is present, and you can see in there all the, actually I'll just switch to it here. So here it is live, and this is the list of OGs. So this now includes the backers. Unfortunately, we are slowly making progress, but it is a little bit challenging to get all the BTC wallets in there, but I am completely committed to doing it. It's just a little complicated. So we will work with all the BTC wallet holders and make sure that your Vitru due is correctly allocated. So these are all the addresses. I think when I last checked, there were some 17,000 odd addresses. Yep, 17,945. Let's see, my doc hasn't refreshed here. I should be seeing more information. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So you're seeing a column here called vote credits. You'll hear about that in a little bit. Let's see. The next one here is validators. So again, we've got the validator tokens all figured out, and there's also a vote credits here, which you'll hear about. And then finally, the DEX token Vitro, you've got all the wallets there and the allocations due, and then there's a cap table for that. So that's what you're going to find in here. That's the first component of the voting. It's on here, the Genesis allocation. So you want to make sure that's right. Because now we are headed to the point where we absolutely need to get it accurate, because it drives a lot of the token allocations and things like that. All right, the next thing we want to do is review the governance charter and things like that. But before we do that, let's bring up this slide again here. And really, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about the process, because I've been steadfast that I do not want to do this booster sale without corporate protection. You also advise the same. What is the current update? What exactly has transpired in the past week? Let's fill us in.
Sure. And I think it's important to note, Nick, I mean, when I first came on, and I came on last week or the week before, and I mentioned that whatever we do, we're going to do it right. And that means no shortcuts. So if you guys are wondering what the holdup has been or why things have been slow, it's really been me on the back end with the red light until we're really comfortable, because what we're building is for the long term. It's not for the short term. And my role here, quite frankly, is to, number one, protect the project, what we're building, and then number two, to make sure that we are here for the long term. So part of that strategy and part of what we really have been tangling with for the past week or so is to make sure that we have a legal entity in place that is going to allow us to operate and to do what it is that we want to do compliantly. And so, as with the world of Web3, things move really quickly. And when we originally started talking about legal entity incorporation and we were going to set up, we had our eyes on Dubai. And Dubai is great, as you know. I mean, hey, I live in Dubai. But the framework here, there's been such an influx of additional companies that have come in. That's right. Yeah, no, picking up where you were. I mean, the change in the environment really shifted from what we thought was going to be something that was relatively quick to something that's 3 to 6 months. And in addition to that, I just think there's a lot more scrutiny that's been happening here on the ground. And so our strategy is, look, we want to move forward, but we want to make sure that we're covered. And we still want to incorporate in Dubai. And there's a lot of plans to actually have some IRL events and additional cool things happening in Dubai. So we have a two-part strategy. The short term, we're going to incorporate in BVI, which allows us to move forward with the boosters. It allows us to move forward with having third-party agreements, making sure we're compliant, and really just getting things up and running and allowing us to do what we need to do. And at the same time, we're going to start the license and approval process in Dubai, which will take around 3 to 6 months. So you see, it's a two-pronged process. We want to do something in the short term. And while that's going on, we're going to kick off the licensing and approval process here in Dubai. And that's really what the vote is about today.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, BVI stands for British Virgin Islands. So it's not apparent to everyone. So yeah, let's look at these documents. Can you walk us through this? So let's walk through this document here. What is this one about?
Sure. So this is really our summary of what is going to be voted on. And it is essentially what I've just said, is that we have a two-prong approach. The first is setting up in BVI for short term. And then as we set up, we're also going to go ahead and apply for the license and approval in Dubai. So what you see here is background, for the Dubai entity in terms of having things be very straightforward, very simple. I suggest to have Nick as sole shareholder and managing member. Keep things, super, super easy for that one, because it is a short-term vehicle to allow us to really get going. And then in terms of summary for the Dubai entity, what we hope to do is, Nick, you'll still be managing member, but we're also going to have a validator council lead be a member as well. And I think that's really important because it brings in the community into that corporate structure as well.
Great. All right, so we have a list of objectives here. I don't know that we need to read through them. People can read through them. So this kind of summarizes. I think what I'd like to jump to, if you don't mind, is the actual corp entity document that you framed. Because what I'd like for people to understand is the role of the corporate entity and why we need it, and how things are gonna happen between the DAO and the corporate entity. Because I feel like, let's just address head on, people get a little worried about, like, oh, is this corporate entity, is this a power grab, is this something like that? And I just want to make sure that you address directly what this means.
Right. And I think we've sort of gone 360 in the world of Web3 to everything is, decentralized and everything is virtual. But in reality, we need to have a legal entity to do things, right? We need to protect ourselves in terms of legal agreements. We need to make sure we're compliant. All of that has to be tied to a legal entity. And the legal entity is separate from the DAO. And so the way that they are connected is through two documents. The first document is the DAO charter, And the second document is really outlined here, which is sort of an operating agreement of the legal entity. So this is, you've probably heard the term before, wrapping a DAO. This is how we're going to wrap it and protect it with the legal entity. So think of it as two different scopes of responsibility and authorities for these two different entities. So the DAO, you guys all know, Nick just went through the councils. You've got strategy, operations. I'm going to miss a few. Technology. What else am I missing?
Marketing,
community,
ecosystem,
community, marketing. Right. Yeah. You've got all of that, and that's clearly outlined with the councils, and that is there. But for the entity, we need to have some ability to make decisions with respect to legal. For example, if there's some legal action taken against Vitruvio, the legal entity needs to act. Secondly, financial in some certain situations. We don't want the DAO to, I'm just throwing it out here, and you guys are going to get to know me. I shoot from the hip. I don't bite my tongue. So we don't want the DAO to, have a situation where, taking on millions of dollars of debt, right? So that's reserved for these financial decisions and things like that are definitely would impact the longevity of the project itself, are reserved for the legal entity. And contractual. So that's really the scope. You can think about it in three different flavors there. You've got legal, you've got financial, and you've got, I like to call it contractual. That's really the difference.
Would it be fair to say that the corporate entity acts on direction of the DAO leadership?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think, it's also a dance. It's a balance, right? You can even think about it in the way that the US government is set up. We've got three different branches, right? And they're equal and they have different functions. I see it that it has to be a balance. It has to be a balance because there needs to be the mission, the drive, the intent, the voice of the entire DAO within this legal entity. But there also needs to be some protection for those members and for what we're trying to do, so that it can't be, encumbered. So I see it as a dance.
So this is good to start off with, but over time, if the DAO decides that there need to be more members, can we do that? Can we just add members to the corporate entity as needed?
So within the governance part of the DAO, there is ability to vote on governance structure. And I think that that's something that also within the Senate as well, that there can be discussions about that. And I really think it has to evolve over time. Right now, as we're starting out, we have a clear mission and a desire of where we want to be, but along that path, we don't know what might happen in terms of the business direction. So certainly, in terms of governance, that is there for the DAO.
All right. So starting off with the BVI entity, I'm the sole sort of shareholder there. When we talk about shares, we want to make it clear that we're not talking about money. Actually, it's just we have no value on those shares. Is that correct?
Right. It's zero par value. There's no money. It's really just, once again, we're back to the fact that we have to create a legal entity. It's just for the existence of the entity and to make it very straightforward and simple.
Okay. So in the BVI entity, it's me, and in the Dubai entity, it's going to be myself and the validator council lead. What personal liability are we subject to by being in that role of a director in these corporations?
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's important to highlight that because, as a member of the DAO, you're somewhat protected, somewhat behind the scenes, right? Let's say there's 10,000, 20,000 DAO members. Legal action is not going to be attributed, and no one's going to go after 20,000 people. But for directors, it's different. People who are directors or officers and really active in the day-to-day functions of the legal entity, they have skin in the game. You do have some liability, although it's limited. But that's important to note. And I think that's another reason why we do need the separation and the balance between the control and the governance of the two entities.
Great, thanks. So basically, we need to have the corporate entity in order to be able to work within the laws of the different countries where we are. So BVI. So the booster sale we are about to do is under the BVI entity, and so the laws of BVI apply. Do they allow the booster sale to occur?
Yes, they do. Yes.
All right. So that's an unconditional kind of, like, we can just do it. It's cool, and it doesn't
Right.
matter if it's a U.S. citizen or someone who's participating in the booster sale.
Right. So that's another reason why we've decided to start at BVI, right? So we have a lot more, compliance obligations in Dubai in terms of licensing. So we wouldn't really be able to do it in Dubai. So that's the reason why we're going to BVI, is to be able to do the booster sales and to be able to do this to start. Now, that being said, that scope of flexibility will be good for booster sales. But as we continue to build, we certainly will need to continue to go forward with the licenses and approvals in Dubai.
Okay, got it. Great. So what is the, obviously, we don't want to wait until the vote is done. We shall assume that maybe we're going to get a yes vote on this, but can we proceed without actually doing everything? Like,
I would,
as if we're almost there. Yeah.
Well, we have things queued up, right? So, I mean, I would think that, generally people want this to go forward. There's going to be a yes vote. We have things queued up. I'm just waiting for the green light. We'll pull the switch and we're off. We're off to the races.
Okay, great. And how long is the BVI incorporation going to take, in your estimation? I won't hold you to a date, because it
should be done by the end of next week.
Okay. All right, cool. So by the time we are ready to do the booster sale, we have the incorporated entity then to protect us in that front.
Yes, that's right. That's
Excellent.
right.
All right. So now let's look at the next document, which is the most important document. And Jamila, I'm going to kind of walk people through it and explain in layman's terms what we've intended to do here. But I'll occasionally ask you to jump in and talk a little bit about it. So what we've created here is a very short and a very concise governance charter. So this is analogous to the Constitution, but for our DAO. So this here tells us some basic things, and we deliberately kept it very simple, folks, because what we want to do is have the DAO acting as an entity, as an organization, make changes to this. And so if we start off with a very complex document, then it's much harder to undo things, right? So it's much easier to keep things simple and then build upon it. Build based upon our experience, build upon based upon our needs. So that's kind of what you have in this document. So the preamble here, the initial part, basically explains what we are talking about. I explained in last week's download the significance of the N there. So, we want to basically call it an NDAO, a nascent DAO, a new renaissance, if you will, an NDAO. So that's kind of what we talk about. Now, the DAO basically has a two-level operating model. There's the membership and there's organization. So in my experience, looking at how other DAOs operate, etc., the DAOs that are fully decentralized, where everything is proposal, vote, etc., tend to be very focused. They have like some niche concept, and they just work on that. We are building a protocol here, and we are getting it started. It's a very broad thing. We are trying to get a whole bunch of Web 2 people on here. Even the Web 3 folks that we are bringing on are still not what I would call crypto native. They are barely crypto able, if you will. They're just able to do what they are. So if we have that kind of structure, what we will have is almost analysis paralysis. We won't be able to move very quickly. So this two-level operating model essentially says we're going to do voting and things like that for the really, really important parts. But then we are almost going to have like a federated system where we delegate authority to the councils and their leads and have them in their capacity as domain experts do what's right for the DAO and in order to achieve its mission. So that's what this document is structured like. Now, the way it starts off with, is around the membership. So the first thing to understand is the concept of vote credits. So on day one, all of you have the token assignments that are in the document I just shared earlier, the cap table. So what we do is we take those and we divide them by 50, and that gives you the vote credits you're eligible for the Nexus token. So all the holders in general will have a Nexus token. Now, those vote credits are what translate into votes. And it's very easy to calculate how many votes. You just take the square root of your vote credits, and that's how many votes you have. So the reason that the square root concept is applied is to remove the undue influence of whales. So someone with a large token pool, they still have a smaller number of votes that can be easily matched by others who have smaller token shares. So the Nexus tokens, we have 20, like if you look here, there's 24 million of them. And so they will basically account for around 440,000 vote credits, and that's about 44%. Now the validators, they have their own token assignments, but we are ignoring that for the purpose of vote credits. Each validator is going to have a flat 200 vote credits. The reason for that is because the validators are really, really important in the ecosystem. They are the ones who secure this blockchain, and they are the ones who already made a significant investment, and so they have an elevated number of votes than they would ordinarily have. Now, we have 500 validators, but we are looking at the prospect of getting professional node operators also on there. So we're gonna keep about 50 additional sort of validator tokens in reserve. So the DAO can decide when one is to be assigned. But basically, the second type of token is a validator token. The third type of token in the membership is a steward token, of which there are only 5. So think of the steward token as really a token that a council lead has, and it is a valuable token because it gives you leadership capability and decision-making capability and financial spending authority within your council. So each of those tokens is worth 75,000 vote credits. And if a steward, if a council lead is replaced, their steward token is taken away and given to the new one. Now, a council lead is replaced by vote. And so when that vote happens and there's a new council lead, the steward token will be taken from them and replaced. So here's a breakdown, if you will, and you can see how in the architecture of this, it's very much balanced there. So you have the community at large, which is the membership, having about 44% of the vote. We have the validators having about 11%. So the community at large, and then the steward tokens account for 45% of the vote. And you can see the breakdown. Now, one thing I'll point out is the strategy council. That is double any of the other councils vote. So that's just a small leadership assignment there. So this is essentially the weight, if you will, of the votes, and it gives you a clear idea of when we do a vote, what's based on who votes, etc., what the outcome is likely to be. Now let's go a little further and look at the DAO organization. So nothing has changed here other than the center, which previously used to say DAO Council, and we've renamed that to the Senate. Now, we wanted to have a better name to clearly indicate that is a body of authority within this DAO. Let me zoom in a bit more to make sure it's visible better on the screen. There we go. All right. So other than that, we've got the 5 councils and the teams with them, and each council has a team lead. So let's walk through how the Senate works. The Senate consists of 9 members. I can zoom out a bit here. So it is responsible for the overarching vision and direction of both the protocol and the DAO, and it is responsible for electing the council leads. Now, 3 of these seats are occupied by non-leads. So 5 of the 9 members are the council leads. So that's them. And then 3 of them are members not in the community and who rotate every quarter. Members of the communities. I misspoke there. And that rotate every quarter, and 1 that is there for 6 months. So let's look at what that makeup is. So you've got the strategy council lead. That's me right now. I'm the chairperson of the Senate. We've got the tech council lead, creator council lead, ecosystem council lead, marketing council lead. So that's your 5 council leads. Then we have an elected validator rep. We have an elected YouTuber rep, and we have 2 elected community members. So that constitutes the 9-member Senate. Now, of these, the YouTuber rep and the 2 community members, they rotate out every quarter. So at the beginning of every calendar quarter, you would have elected a new person to fill that role. The validator rep role is 6 months. It is larger than in scope than that, because the validator rep is also in the corporate structure, and we don't want to constantly go back to like the Dubai corporate government, whatever regulations are, and keep changing that. It would be inefficient to do that every quarter. So we've extended that to 6 months. So basically, there are here in this section here how the council leads are going to be appointed. So initially, I have appointed them, and they're going to remain in place until someone has a proposal that says we want to elect a new lead. So you're free to do that, and under these rules. So to elect a new council lead, you require a supermajority. So 66.66% of the vote, and of that, you need a quorum of 25% of the vote credits. So 250,000 vote credits are needed, and of that, 66% have to vote for the new council lead, and then they get into place. The bar is a little bit higher for a strategy council, and it's just double the number of vote credits. So we want more of the DAO to be representative of replacing strategy council. If a council lead position is initially unfulfilled, you don't need to have an election. The strategy council lead can fill it. I'm specifically here referring to the ecosystem lead position, which is currently unfilled. I plan on filling it, but I'll probably still look for a vote on that. All right. So now councils are really, really important in this structure. And as I mentioned, it's sort of a federated system where you put someone who is really responsible, who's really skilled in their domain, and you give them authority, and you give them responsibility, and you give them a mission, and you move forward with that. So this is not that different from having, for example, in the marketing role, a CMO, or in the technology role, a CTO, and so on and so forth in a company. That's basically what you do. You don't sit and micromanage decisions of senior experienced staffers. What you do is you give them direction, and you give them authority within boundaries, within rails, and that's how this is designed to be. So within this section, you're going to see what each of the councils is responsible for, and also what the teams are going to be. So the team structure is fluid. It can change a little bit. We deliberately did that because we want to be agile in this protocol. We don't want to be like, well, we've said there's going to be this structure, and so we'll always have this structure. So we want to have some overarching framework, but within that, there's a little bit of agility, right? So now let's talk about how proposals are created. So anyone can create a proposal. All you need is 10 votes of sponsorship. So you can get 10 votes is not a whole lot of vote credits. That's a 100 vote credits. So the bar is pretty low for you to get a sponsorship for a proposal. We wanted to have that in there so we wouldn't be flooded with proposals that don't necessarily have merit. So then this goes to the Senate, and the Senate then decides if that proposal merits going to a DAO vote. So if the Senate endorses it, then that proposal goes to the broader membership majority, and then it can be voted on with a quorum of 25% of 250,000 votes, and all you need is a simple majority there. So you need like 51% of the vote, and you're good to go. Every member has the inherent right to cast a vote, but additionally, you don't need to always be present for a vote. We will provide you the software and the smart contracts so that you can go ahead and delegate your vote credits as you deem fit to different people. So you can say that, well, I want to give half my vote credits to this person and half to this person, etc. And you can do that, and then they will vote on your behalf. But the algorithm still remains the same. What are the types of things that you would vote on? Well, there's DAO governance, community engagement, project funding, token management, platform development. Just about most topics are fair game, but ultimately we leave it to the discretion of the Senate, the 9 members of the Senate, to determine what vote to move forward to the community and what would not do that. All right, now we come to the corporate entity part, which we've already discussed, so I won't go much more into detail, but essentially this states that the DAO will operate in conjunction with Ruby VI Private Limited. This will be changed later when we have the Dubai option. All right, and then let's go on to the treasury management, which is sort of the most important part. 1 second here. Okay, so the financial controls are really, really important for this protocol and DAO in particular, given what we've been through. So what we don't want is a system that is so onerous that it becomes impossible to manage on a day-to-day basis. So what we have here is a system that is flexible, yet provides controls over funds. So the way this works is that the Senate primarily has control. So it's a 6 of 9 multi-sig wallet that has control over all the DAO's financial assets. Each of the councils have to have a budget that's been approved by the Senate in advance, and what the Senate does is allocate them funds on a monthly basis for what their spending needs are for that month. So that's kind of how it works, and those allocations are intended to cover their 1 month. But if there can be certain out-of-band provisions, for example, maybe there is an event at a gallery and we have to pay a deposit or whatever that is out of band, and so the Senate would be responsible for allocating those funds. So the multi-sig transfer rules are as follows. So up to $1,000 is approved by that council lead. Now keep in mind, this is from a narrow budget for 1 month. This is what they have in their wallet, but within that also we have further controls. From 1K to 5K, it requires 2 signers. So there's the council lead and any senator that's not a council lead. So that means a member of the community. So there are 4 members of the community there who are not council leads. So one of them has to sign off along with the council lead on that expense. Finally, 5K to 25K requires 3 signatures: the council lead, an additional council lead, so any of the additional council leads, and then one of the senators who is not a council lead, so one of the 4 members. So we've covered essentially all the bases there in the Senate, and given that anything over 25K is not allowed. No council may spend anything over 25K. It has to go to the Senate and get 6 signatures before anything can be done. Now, we want to make sure that we create a system where people are focused on doing their job and not doing a whole bunch of bookkeeping, etc. We've got the budgets, we've got the multi-sig, we've got all these levels of protection. So we only need expenditures over $5,000 to have a comprehensive documentation. Things below that are assumed to be part of the budget and are already known to everyone, so it should be pretty clear what it is. But we don't want onerous bookkeeping requirements and receipts and things like that on there. We put it at 5K and above. That's where we need more oversight and control to have financial transparencies. So overall, with this treasury management system, we've created a mechanism by which no single individual can do harm with the funds that we have. And we've also made it where there are checks and balances at different points. And because it is all done on chain with contracts with the multisig, this data is available for anyone to look at. So that's the basic governance charter. As you've seen, we've covered the main things there. We've covered voting, we've covered membership, and we've covered the treasury. The idea here is that now the DAO will evolve over time and take its own path, just like a nation or something like that. The people vote and decide what things have to be done. But this federated system works really well for this kind of DAO, and we'll find out for sure. But Jamelia, just in closing here on this, what are your thoughts on some of the checks and balances we put on here?
I mean, I think it's just very comprehensive. And, back to our whole point at the beginning about what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we're here for the long term. The checks and balances, the consistency between the DAO governance and the other document that I walk through. I mean, those are just really key things. And I think it's really just set up so that people can jump in, they can participate, they can be part of something great, and they can feel good about it because they know that everything is transparent and everything it's clear as day.
Great. Well, thank you for all your help in getting this done. We couldn't have done it without you. Appreciate it. And looking forward to having all these corporate sort of actions done so we can move forward with our booster sale as quickly as possible. But it's late there. Thank you so much. Good night. And we'll see you again sometime on this. All right. Thanks.